The Cartoonerific podcast is sponsored by the Wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific, yeah! It's Cartoonerific, Cartoonerific, it's Cartoonerific, with your host Brian Mitchell.
Well, Happy New Year, and welcome back to the Cartoonerific Classic Animated Cartoon Podcast. My name is Brian Mitchell, and did you miss us? Well, I missed you. Anyway, I'm glad to be back. You know, last year I got a bunch of comments from people asking me to elaborate on my career, what I had done, what I had worked on, and you know, a lot of that does come out in the shows. You get bits and pieces of things. And, you know, I've always said that the guest is the star of the show, so I don't really focus on myself as much. But you know, people are interested, and that's what this is all about. So somewhere down the line, we will do a show about my background and things that I've done, worked on, specialties and stuff like that, but it'll probably be done with somebody interviewing me on the show. So we're kind of planning that out, and that will come. We will do a show about me, and hopefully that'll be fun. But anyway, today our episode is going to be about three films: Walt Disney's Ichabod and Mr. Toad, Peter Pan, and Cinderella. And last year we had on a special guest. It was a designer here in New York. Her name is Marjorie Stewart, and she's designed a lot of homes in and out of New York, going all the way out to the West Coast. And she has an incredible eye for color. And so she had never seen Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs and Pinocchio and Bambi, until I introduced it to her and asked her to take a look at them and tell us what she thought. And she was really floored by them. So I asked her if she would do this again for some other Disney films. And so she watched Ichabod and Mr. Toad and Peter Pan, and Cinderella she did see, and she loved Cinderella as a kid. So she's back today to talk about those films with me. And now that she's kind of getting a rounded view of animation, it's going to be interesting to hear what she says. But anyway, she's coming up next. Don't go away. It should be a good one.
Cartoonerific is the place to be to celebrate hand-drawn animated cartoons. The Cartoonerific podcast features interviews with the magic makers behind your favorite animated cartoons, with episodes uploaded every Friday. Or visit the Cartoonerific blog featuring articles about classic cartoon animation. At the Cartoonerific Gallery, view original animation art and memorabilia from your favorite animated films and TV shows. The company store features exclusive swag from the Cartoonerific universe. And coming soon, brand new world premiere cartoons on the Cartoonerific channel. It's all here. Join the fun at www.cartoonerific.com. That's cartoon, ERIFIC.com. It's Cartoonerific. saving the universe one funny cartoon at a time. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
You know, last year we did an episode where it was somebody that never saw Snow White, Pinocchio, Bambi, Fantasia, and it seemed like it would make for an interesting show. And a lot of you out there really responded to it. And so people have said, you know, I'm really into hearing what she thinks about some of the other films that came after. So basically, we invited her back. So I want to welcome back designer and design expert, Miss Marjorie Stewart. Hi, Marjorie. How you doing today?
Hi, Brian. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. So
Thank you.
last time we had you on, you were watching some Disney feature films for the first time. And you watched Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. You watched Pinocchio, I believe, Bambi, and Fantasia. And we were talking about that, and Steamboat Willie and the Old Mill. You watched all that.
Yes.
And so we were talking about having you back.
And the spring.
Got us of spring.
Yes.
So she watched all those for the first time, and the consensus was you really loved all of it, didn't you?
I really did. I was having a very good time. I did not expect to and love it as much as I did, especially seeing the progression in the animation and the artwork and the colors.
Well, that's good. Now, the colors are very important in an animated film because it really brings forth the emotion of the scenes or the sequences. So color plays a big part in Disney films. And, you know, we had on a gentleman by the name of Jerry Reese who did a movie that I was talking to you about, The Brave Little Toaster, which happens to be a really great little movie. And, you know, the way he put it was that everything from the voices down to the script and the drawings of the characters, the acting, the backgrounds, color, it's all in the service of the story, including the music. So all that comes into play. But anyway, I charged you.
You did.
To watch a few other Disney films, and you did watch a few, and that's why we're having you back here to talk about those. So we skipped around a bit. We went to some of the biggies, and actually one of my favorites, Ichabod and Mr. Toad, we had you watch. Mm-hmm. You watched Peter Pan, and one of your childhood favorites, Cinderella.
Cinderella, yes.
Yes, and I think you even got to another one. What was that? The Jungle Book,
Jungle
right?
Book, yeah. You gave me I got a whole nother assignment, folks.
Yeah, so Lady and the Tramp, I think I also said. But, you know, today we're just going to focus on these three films. And so let's talk about Ichabod and Mr. Toad in The Legend of Sleepy Hollow and the Mr. Toad segment. And that made up that movie.
So Washington Irving wrote the Headless Horseman, you know, story with Ichabod Crane, but who wrote this Mr. Toad story? What?
Oh, that's the last name is Graham. I can't think of the first name, but the last name is Graham. So the reason why they paired those two together, they were working on them, I think, as individual feature films.
That was my next question. Why are they paired together?
They were working on them as individual feature films. They had a whole lot of development going on right around the time of Pinocchio and Fantasia, and they were developing Alice in Wonderland and Peter Pan, a lot of different things going on. And what ended up happening was during the time that they actually decided to make this, they needed to make movies kind of economically. because they just come out of the war. A lot of the money that was owed to them from the releases of Snow White and Pinocchio and Bambi were frozen in Europe. Money was starting to trickle back in, but they realized that they had to make a bunch of features kind of on the, I don't want to say cheap, but just more economically minded. So what they ended up doing was they worked on a film called Make Mine Music, and then another one called Fun and Fancy Free, which were, they called them package pictures. And Fun and Fancy Free was basically Jack and the Beanstalk teamed with a thing called Bongo, the circus bear. And so they released that as a movie. And Ichabod and Mr. Toad, I think, was the last of those that came out. They have a feature look to them. They look good. They're very well styled.
They do.
And
lots of action.
Lots of action. But it's more on the cartoony side, except for maybe a few characters, like maybe the girl, Katrina. But the character is basically, it's Katrina, and she's basically the love of everybody's life in this little town.
She is the talk of the town.
She's the talk of the town. So Brom Bones is courting her, and Ichabod is too.
Hopeful. He's quite hopeful.
That's right. So
delusional, but what can you do?
Yeah.
Give a fella some hope.
Yeah, there you go. So anyway, what you watched them, and what was the favorite out of the two of those that you watched?
That's a tricky question, because the color styling of Ichabod was amazing, and I'm always drawn to that. It really, I get very wrapped up in that. But in terms of the story, I enjoyed the Mr. Toad story. All of his friends, trying to get this character out of a scrape, and also just the action and the humor, and
right.
So I enjoyed Mr. Toad more in terms of like visual and the story,
right.
But I really loved the colors of Ichabod as well.
I love them both, and I think they're extremely clever. Some of the devices, and other people have brought this up, like instead of actually showing Toad incarcerated, show him get thrown into jail, it's a news headline.
Oh,
they
yeah.
seem to do that a lot in there. All of a sudden, it's another news headline. He escapes, and so it's and then when he's vindicated, there's another headline.
Mm-hmm.
So it seems
I did like that.
Yeah. So nice little devices
little
in
foil,
there.
Yeah.
Nice little devices. The color styling, which you really liked, and you seemed to gravitate toward Mary Blair, and you were looking at the book. By John Kaymaker.
You sent me this book, The Flair of Mary Blair, The Art and Flair of Mary Blair.
Yeah.
And the book alone, I just love it. It's funny because recently I finally went down to Disney World, and I wanted to do the It's a Small World ride specifically because you told me that she had done the color design for that.
Right.
And I mean, with all due, it's a little boring.
Right.
But I enjoyed the whimsy of all the different color pairings. So I think that these movies that you've tasked me to see focus very much on her work and her
right.
color styling.
I think It's a Small World comes from it's from 1964, and it's at the time it was an attraction that I don't think anybody was really attempting. And what ties that whole thing together is the song and the styling. Most of those early attractions, they haven't really been updated. They've just, it's the same after all these years. So, I'm sure it's a favorite of a lot of people, but I understand what you're talking about. It hasn't really changed So I can understand that it might have been a little boring to you. But
When I was a kid, when I was really little, there was one grade school, I think it was kindergarten or maybe first grade, and she had a little portable record player, and she would pull it out of her closet, and she had one record, and it was It's a Small World, and she would play it over and over, and we would dance around, and, I was happy just to have a friend, so I went along with it, but I'm not going to lie, hearing it was a little bit of a flashback to have to hear it over and over.
I hear you.
But no, I loved the shapes and the colors and the little characters.
Cool.
Were sweet.
Very good. Very good. So anyway, just getting back to Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Was there anything else that you liked about the movie?
It started me kind of thinking about a lot of these Walt Disney things, whether they deal with animals and their characteristics, like in Jungle Book and Mr. Toad, or, Snow White, or the Headless Horseman, or Cinderella, and certainly Peter Pan, is what he's addressing in terms of like the supernatural or the paranormal. Mm-hmm. And there is this underlying theme that I am definitely starting to see, whether it's the characters of animals being attributed these human characteristics that we discussed a little bit of that last time, mm-hmm. or whether it's supernatural forces intervening in one's life. You could call it good fortune. You could call it
like good luck.
The good luck, yeah. The fairy godmother, things like that. Like, I'm starting to see a lot that's continuous throughout a lot of these films, and definitely in Peter Pan.
They deal with.
Just the fact that in Ichabod, they never unmask this headless horseman.
Right.
You're left to wonder, was it the town bully who ended up marrying Katrina?
Right.
Running his competitor out of the village, or was it really a monster, a tormented soul just coming to scare everyone? I don't know.
I think they left it open at the end.
They leave it totally open.
Which is kind of neat in a way.
I like it.
I would have thought, putting those things together, I'm sure they kind of grappled with the idea of, okay, which one comes first? Do we do the Headless Horseman first and then go to Mr. Toad as the second one?
Mm-hmm.
Just because it wraps up, it has kind of a happy, upbeat ending,
There's closure.
Yeah. But I noticed that in a lot of Disney films, starting in the late 40s and going through to even the late 50s, a lot of these things don't wrap up too well, you haven't, I don't think you've seen these things, but Davy Crockett dies at the Alamo. And there's a movie called The Great Locomotive Chase, where basically it is a fight between the North and South. It's about a group of soldiers that go down to try to burn all the railroad crossings down south. And they get caught. Along with everything else. Yeah, and they get caught, and some of them die. So with Old Yeller, it's like another movie that ends on a down. Really, it's a downer. The boy has to shoot his dog, and that's kind of, that's not exactly the end of the movie. It's not really a joyous ending, So there's a lot of things that Disney was doing where he was just kind of not going the happy ending route. And so with Ichabod and Mr. Toad, it is probably one of the films that does not end on a happy note. It tries to, but it's kind of like it's open-ended at the end, like what happened. So interesting, right?
It is. I definitely was left wondering. You would think he would have done Mr. Toad and ended on that.
Yeah, ended on the positive note.
That upbeat, but yeah, no.
All right, let's jump to. You have any other thoughts about that, or maybe we'll circle back to that. Maybe we'll circle back to that.
Just remind me again, please, what year that.
I believe it was 1947. It came out in 1947.
It explains a lot. Not everything does end up happy.
No, good point.
And I think that maybe it was
kind of this melancholy ending to a Disney film. I don't know.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Oh no, I have no problem with it.
Yeah.
I have no problem with it. I always liked the ending because it was like it left you thinking. Most of these Disney films, they got all the songs in them and stuff, and then you, when you're watching them, you take the song with you. You leave the theater, zippity-doo-dah, or, when you wish upon a star, not going to go into singing all of them, but bibbidi-bobbidi-boo and all that, and, the bare necessities, or, you're leaving the theater and you're humming some of these songs, because that's, Walt Disney believed that, you see the picture, you enjoy the picture, but what you're left with is the memory of a song, and you can take that with you.
Oh, I love singing the little songs after.
Yeah.
They do stick.
They do stick, and so that's important. But with this picture, with Ichabod and Mr. Toad, you leave the theater, and you're still thinking of the songs, but you're also really thinking, did Brom Bones do this, or was there really a headless horseman, just like you said? So it kind of leaves you wondering, and it's kind of a neat little ending. It's a little spooky, So anyway, let's jump to the next picture you watched, and it was a picture that you watched in your childhood, and you got to revisit it again. And what picture was that?
Cinderella.
So what are your observations on that? Because you saw it as a little kid, but not from an adult's perspective. And when you watch it now, I'm sure there's a lot of nostalgia that goes through when you're watching it.
Yes, there is, but there was a remarkable amount of it that I did not remember whatsoever. Things that I would think would have delighted me so much as a child. I really only had the broad strokes. I know that after I saw the movie, my father bought the record for me, and it was like my first very own record, and I loved it. I just loved the music and all that. But if I look at it now, and I compare it in my mind to the artwork that went into Snow White or Bambi, Pinocchio, for example, it's I don't want to use a bad word. And no, not.
It depends on what kind of bad word you're talking about.
I don't want to, because I love the movie.
Right.
But the elements like water, wind, foliage, things like that are not treated in the same manner as they were. That struck me so much when I watched Bambi and Snow White.
I think I can bridge that to kind of. So when they were doing Snow White, they were really pushing toward realism. So even though it's a fantasy, they were so in tune to trying to make Snow White look like flesh and blood. Maybe not. They knew it wasn't going to be like a real person, but they wanted it to be absolutely believable.
Oh, she blushes. Yeah.
And so, but they went to town like on those backgrounds because the scenics are pretty amazing.
They are amazing.
The castle,
the masonry,
and the dwarfs,
the architectural detail,
the dwarf's cottage, the water,
the woodwork in the dwarf's cottage.
Right. And so there was a lot of attention to that, a lot of attention to shadows, which they do address in Cinderella. They do it, but it's done in a different way, and it's done. It's very Mary Blairish, if you notice. It's not as realistic. It's more stylistic.
It's much more stylistic. I want to use the word cursory, but that makes it sound as though they didn't care. So
no.
I don't think that that's the proper word.
I also think that with Cinderella, like I said, the pictures before it were done in an economical way. Cinderella was also done in a very economical way for Disney. And so we're not talking about the Jetsons. We're not talking about that type of economics where you're producing something on a shoestring, but or the Flintstones. But for Disney, they had to make this picture, and they had to make it in a certain way that they could get the work done at a pretty good pace. So if you notice, a lot of the characters are very cartoony.
That was the word I was going to use.
And I don't mind that, but the only characters that are absolutely realistic in that movie, and you could probably tell me which ones they are.
Obviously Cinderella.
Right. There's only maybe 3 characters in the whole picture that are drawn realistically. So, okay. So Cinderella, the prince.
Yes.
The prince.
Oh, when he rolls his eyes to high heaven with yes, there's a lot of detail there.
And the evil stepmother.
Yes.
Okay. So, yeah.
But sorry, but I was trying to figure out, she reminds me of some kind of actress, and I want to say like Agnes Moorehead, like when she comes down the stairs.
I could tell you who it is. It's Eleanor Audley. Eleanor Audley was she was an actress back in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. She played there was a show called Green Acres. She played the mother of Oliver Wendell Douglas in that show, Eddie Albert's character. She's actually the voice of in the Haunted Mansion in Florida and Disneyland. She is the voice of the woman in the seance room in the crystal ball.
Oh, wow, really?
So, yeah, so that's the voice. So she did that in the 60s. But they pretty much shot her with a movie camera and didn't trace her, but they used her facial attitudes and stuff for that character. So she did the voice, but she was also the model for it.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, so that's very interesting.
And then you go to her daughter, the stepsisters, and they're so cartoony.
They're cartoony. Yeah,
I mean, one of them actually looks like Fred Flintstone.
Yeah. But, those characters, this is the thing. When you get cartoony characters like the mice and you get Lucifer, they're a lot of fun to watch. The birds are cartoony. And then you have the king, who's very cartoon, and the Grand Duke. The Grand Duke. And then you got the evil stepsisters. A lot of those characters in the movie are easier to animate because you can take a lot of liberties. It's faster for an animator to do that. But then when you get a character that is more realistic, like a Cinderella or the evil stepmother or the prince, it takes more time. And so you have to have your best people working on those characters. But the thing is that you can get the movie done a lot quicker. If all the characters were cartoony, I know you watched Dumbo, and so I know you didn't like Dumbo for a lot of reasons, but I think part of the reason for that is because there is no character in there that is absolutely, pushing for any sort of realism. Mm-hmm. And I think you need the mix. I think you need that serious part of the movie, and then and the cartoony stuff kind of livens it up. But I think you need that.
I think you're right. I'm sad that I just didn't relate. I didn't see anything that I could relate to in Dumbo. I thought, obviously there were moments in it where if you have a beating heart, of course you're going to be moved by it. But for the most part,
You weren't too happy with that movie. But we actually skirted talking about that because a lot of people do like it.
I know.
But
I'm sorry, people.
No, that's all right. That's all right. But there are a lot of people. There are people out there. I'm sure it's not one of their favorite movies. But we didn't talk about it because I don't think there was anything. There were a couple of moments in there that you liked, but we couldn't really get into a good conversation about it because I don't think you were too pleased with a lot of the movie.
True.
So anyway, we kind of skirted that. So, I hope I didn't jip anybody out of anything.
I'm sorry, I shot it down. Blame me. Put the blame on me.
That's all right. So anyway, getting back to Cinderella, yeah, I think that movie was done in a very economical way, and so that they could get the stuff done. And and the focus was on the acting and the entertainment of the movie, which a lot of people, a lot of critics have said, even though Snow White, people absolutely love Snow White, but when Cinderella came out, it actually got a really good reaction and did very well in the theaters, which it needed to do.
Yeah, and here's my theory as to why. Because this poor girl, I mean, anybody would just break under that kind of torment. Mm-hmm. If you think of this happening like in real life, as they say, absolutely breaks your heart.
It does.
It absolutely breaks your heart, and the animation, even though it's the majority of it is the cartoony, the word I was reluctant to attribute. When those girls start tearing at her beautiful dress that her friends made for her little animal friends, their fingers suddenly get so long, like claws, like
right.
monsters, and the shadows, and it's so violent and it's so jarring and it really does you can't help but to relate to it, even though it's a different style.
The magic of animation.
Yes.
Because that's what happens. No, that's what happens.
No, I agree.
When animation is done well, that's what you do, and you use everything at your disposal to excite an audience or to terrify an audience or to make them happy, or find joy in a scene. You use whatever you can. Now, I could see animators absolutely exaggerating the hands to be more claw-like, and instead of just regular hands, but that's what you do. And I know as a storyboard artist, I would exaggerate and I would change the angles to make things more jarring, or the screen direction. There's a thing that it's actually something that I learned in film school years ago, where when you're watching a movie, the action should always play left to right. Meaning if characters are walking, they should always move left to right, because that's a natural thing. Mm-hmm. People move left to right.
The way in which your eye naturally goes.
But if you want to really jar an audience, have a character run the other way. So if you have the action go from right to left, for some reason it's jarring to your eye. Mm-hmm. I've learned that a long, long time ago.
That's interesting.
Yeah. And it was actually something that when I was working at Warner Brothers, I had a storyboard, and normally my storyboards would always go left to right. There was no reason to do right to left action unless there was something jarring on the screen. This was something I just knew. And one day, and I'm sure I've relayed this story before, but I'll just say it again. I'll just make it short. One day, the director came back and he said, "Oh no, we want all the action to play from right to left." And I tried to explain. I said, "Well, normally you don't do that unless you want something jarring on the screen." It's like, no, just do it that way. That's the way the producers want it. So anyway, I spent the next 2 weeks changing everything from going from left to right to right to left.
Wow.
And I just basically took my original storyboard and chucked it and got rid of it. About 300 drawings, just got rid of it. I completed it, all the revisions, and then I submitted it again so that they could take a look at it. And they were like, "Oh, yeah, great." And they said, "Somebody else has to take a look at this." So it was the person executive producing. And so he looked at it and he said, No, this is all wrong. The action should be playing left to right, the way I had it originally.
Oh, no.
They came back down. They said, just give us the original board that you had. And I said, I don't have it. I said, I took it and I used what I could and I chucked the rest. So if anybody's out there that does this kind of work, always save your originals. Don't chuck them. So anyway,
Don't chuck them. But yes, no, that attack scene, the stepsisters are on the right and they are reaching, if you watch it.
They're going from right to left.
They are going for those arms and fingers are going at
That's
her.
right. And if you, I think I have to look at it again, but I think just from memory, I think all the backgrounds are askew. They're not straight on. I think you're looking at corners of rooms and things that kind of turned a little bit to also make the thing a little bit more jarring.
Suspenseful.
Yeah.
There is a lot of suspense in Cinderella.
There is.
There are a lot of scenes where they really draw it out, and when the king sends his soldiers in their black and red, it's weird because all the other colors are so ebullient, you know,
Right.
and playful, and then you have these soldiers caped on black horses, black figures with red capes flying.
Right.
It's
Power.
It's I guess.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Red's a power color.
So out of the whole repertoire for the whole rest of the palette of the movie, and then that whole bit with the key, getting the key to Cinderella so she can be set free at the end.
Oh yeah.
To show that the slipper is hers.
Yeah. That's
so drawn out. It was killing me.
Well, it's supposed to.
I know. I loved it.
There's a thing they had this director at Disney. His name was Wooly Reitherman. He would always get those action scenes, like the climatic scene of Sleeping Beauty, which you haven't watched yet.
I will get to it.
We'll get you to it. The climatic scene of Sleeping Beauty is basically, I think it's maybe about 10 minutes long, 10 or 15 minutes long. It is basically they're leading you to believe that the prince is going to be killed and he's not going to be able to get to Sleeping Beauty. And I don't want to give away the ending. I'm sure you know, but he was very good at making you think that somehow the prince was not going to get to where he needed to go to, or the mice in Cinderella are not going to be able to get up to this top floor, you know, which seems to be a mile up. Well, to them, it's probably like a mile up, or it feels like it, that they're never going to get that key up there in time. And so...
very much like the whale scene in Pinocchio. Trying to get against those waves.
Yeah, the whole thing is, you know, the I hate to say this.
The odds are really working against you.
Yeah, I mean, they in Pinocchio, they really make it feel like, you know, Pinocchio and Geppetto are going to get smashed.
I wondered a lot about this, actually, Brian, because I grew up with my reading very old, like the real deal fairy tale books, and not the softened version, like the version of Cinderella that I was read when I was little was quite gruesome. I mean, people were cutting off bunions and cutting off heels and toes.
Well, in Pinocchio, Jimmy Cricket is squashed in the first or two chapters. You know, he's killed. You know,
some scary Northern European business, and I think that because there is so much dark material in the originals, and Disney wants them to end pleasantly, these suspenseful scenes add that level of drama that, you know, without rolling out the story as it was told in, you know, whatever 1622 or whenever they, you know,
whenever they were written, but
who knows?
Yeah, well, that's why they call him Walt Disney's Cinderella and Walt Disney's Snow White and the Seven. It's his version of it, you know, and he cleaned him up. He cleaned him up a bit.
But he balances that out with those scenes of where you're drawn in because you fall in love with the characters and you're feeling for them, and you want for them to succeed, you want for them to live and survive and be set free and fall in love and go about their merry way.
Absolutely.
But he balances it out with these drawn out, suspenseful scenes, very often at the expense of these poor animals.
Yeah, the animals do take a licking, don't they?
They do, but they keep on ticking.
They do. Well, especially at the end. Anyway, anything you want to add about Cinderella? Anything else you noticed about that? Or
Well, there was a lot of humor that I guess I didn't get when I was so little. Like, I had forgotten. The scene where the king is dreaming in his bed with
the little ones,
bouncing
right?
his grandchildren around and acting the fool, and then he's so he's rudely awakened with the truth. Little details like that, and the music lesson between the sisters.
Yes,
these horrible girls. A lot of fun. Just a great deal of fun.
I think the magic of Disney, and it's something that I've noticed. Just about every scene has something humorous in it, And, if you go with like a regular live action movie, that's not the case. They're looking for the acting and trying to get the sincere acting of every scene. But with these pictures, and that's the magic of it for me, is the fact that every scene has something kind of funny in it. And I think that's really apparent with like Peter Pan. But with Cinderella, even with the mice are doing funny things all the time. There's always some funny accent to something. And, Ward Kimball, who did the mice in Cinderella, and he also did Lucifer, they're funny characters. They're funny expressions going on and the funny, entertaining movements and stuff like that.
Sure. I love that little Gus.
Gus.
Yeah. Yes, but you're right when you compare it to a lot of feature films. A lot of feature films that end up going on to receiving awards and accolades, very often they reach a note and they just stay there. And then looking back, you're kind of like, snooze-a-rama. There's a lot more to life. The life is full of high notes, low notes, mid notes, funny notes,
exactly,
humor, sad,
drama, happy,
suspense. And you're quite right. You're quite right. They do hit all the levels.
Yeah, and even a tear or two.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. What do you think? What do you think was? And probably everybody knows this that's listening to this, but what do you think was Walt Disney's favorite moment in Cinderella?
Well, given that I did not know that man, I think, I don't know, and you can shoot me down because you're the expert, but I think that Walt Disney had a hidden penchant for the supernatural. And the reason why I think that is, and I have two very good reasons from this last assignment. Mm-hmm. The very end of Peter Pan, well, actually all of Peter Pan, but definitely that moment at the very end, mm-hmm. which I know we'll get to, and when the fairy godmother is coming, there are these, and today's paranormal speak, you hear people talk a lot about orbs.
Right.
Orbs of light.
Yeah.
When a spirit or a soul or an entity is present, and not all of you are going to buy into this.
Well, you never know. Maybe they'll all buy into it.
I buy into it. Yeah. And it's very interesting that, mm-hmm. I mean, he's making a cartoon. You could draw anything. You could draw a whirlwind of dead leaves. You could draw a wave of water. You could draw a fog separating. You could do anything. But why did he choose these floating illuminated orbs? And are
you talking about
when the fairy godmother
she comes? It's basically all these orbs.
The orbs are flying.
Right.
And you know that she's a soul because she's
That is very interesting. I never even thought of it that way, but that's very interesting.
This is very interesting. That these flying illuminated orbs are the manner in which she presents herself. They're what delivers this entity to Cinderella. And at the very, very end, mm-hmm. Cinderella says, thank you, thank you. And the fairy godmother is literally on the brink of, and I think she was about to say, I love you. And she stops herself because she doesn't want to tip her hand.
Maybe.
I think that she was someone who had known her. Or some relation or something like that.
That's interesting. That's really deep, I think.
You do?
Yeah, I think that's...
Well, I believe these things.
Yeah, I don't, I never thought of it that way.
She literally
okay, you want me to tell you what Walt Disney's favorite moment?
Yes.
It is in that sequence.
Okay, I want to know Walt Disney's favorite moment. But that's what I think is his favorite moment.
The
orb scene.
It's in the orb scene. It's when Cinderella gets her dress. That's his favorite. That was his favorite scene.
She looked real pretty.
Yeah. He really liked scenes that had joy in them. And Disney, all those classic Disney films have that sense of joy in them somewhere along the way. There's always that. Jerry Beck actually said that to me. He said, every one of these Disney films have that moment. And Jerry Beck, if you don't know who he is, he's an author of many well-written books on animated cartoons. He's an expert. He's very much an expert. So thank you, Jerry.
Yes, thank you, Jerry. But if you think about it, he's also dealing with incomparable purity of Cinderella's heart. Mm-hmm. Because when she got the dress that her animal friends had crafted for her, her gratitude was just as huge as when she got the...
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
There's no difference.
No, there's a pureness of heart. And I think that's why a lot of people like Cinderella. They like the character Cinderella. Like you.
I do.
There you go. Let's jump forward to Peter Pan, made 3 years later. Actually, it was in production for 3 years. It came out in 1953. And it was another picture that was developed early on in the 40s. But they didn't go right into that. They actually went into Alice in Wonderland after Cinderella. And then they were also working on Peter Pan. And you didn't watch Alice in Wonderland because I said, let's not do that. Let's not watch Alice in Wonderland. Let's just jump to Peter Pan.
Well, you said it was a little bit trippy.
It's a little bit trippy, and it doesn't have... like Fantasia is kind of like it's a bunch of different things, and it's more in some sequences are more surreal, and Alice in Wonderland kind of has that feel. It's a lot of different stories within the film, but it doesn't really have like a clear storyline. She kind of goes to Wonderland, and then after a time when she can't deal with this anymore, she just wants to go home. And it's not really a very clear storyline, but you're kind of following all the madcap things that are happening. But that's why I was like, let's not do that. Let's just do Peter Pan and go to Peter Pan, which is I think Peter Pan is a very sweet story.
Oh, very. And again, about keeping your youthful spirit, your young heart, your pure heart, and believing in something. And, that's what Cinderella is saying the whole time. I believe, Right. I think I loved the amazing action sequences of Peter Pan. Obviously, again, the colors were so great.
And what do those three films have in common? That
Mary Blair
was the stylist she was one of the stylists on these movies.
Yeah. Talented lady, man.
Yeah, she was. But there were a lot of other, Disney had so many great talents working for them. And a lot of it was Mary Blair worked, she was just, it was all about color and mood but her stuff is it's not very realistic. It's very stylized. And so you had other people there trying to take that because Walt Disney really loved what she did. But the thing was taking that and finding a way of using it in the movies. And so he had other people working with her to try to kind of bring that to the screen and not losing it, but also, getting some structure too.
I see. Yeah, her colors are not realistic at all. I think one of the things that struck me so much about Snow White was this panoply of earth colors.
Yes.
And they were only accented here and there, but yeah.
Bambi too.
And definitely Bambi. But Bambi, you start to see more in the flora, fauna.
Right.
Pops of interesting color coming through. But yes, no, Mary Blair's color decisions they're not realistic. So I guess she, had people herding the cats, so to speak. And
they were trying. But I think they did a great job. Her colors work really well in Neverland.
Oh, I love it, and in Ichabod.
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And a lot in Cinderella too. There's a lot of, I think out of all those three pictures, I would say that the Ichabod section and Cinderella, you see a lot of heavy Mary Blair in there. And you see it in Neverland. You see a lot of it in Neverland when they go there because it's more fanciful.
Very, very much. But if you think about all the colors of the rainbow, I mean, and every single shade therein, I just know from my design work how I sweated every single little decision, and I can't imagine how much thought and time she put into getting it just right.
I don't know. I know it seemed to come very natural to her. I mean, that was just the way she worked. I don't know how much time and effort she put into that. I would imagine she...
Looks like a lot to me.
Yeah, probably.
I love the choices.
Probably, but I don't think she was afraid to experiment with the colors, But I think she just had a very natural sense.
Oh, I don't think that she sweated it out of fear or a lack of confidence. I just think, because that doesn't come through.
No.
But there's just so many amazing color combinations that she presents, and it just dazzles. It just really dazzles. And the action sequences, and then also, again, this toying with the paranormal, supernatural element. You've got a boy who's flying around, fairies. They're going to a whole other world in the middle of the night that has a whole other space and a whole other scale of time. And those are the things I think that interest me the most about
it's interesting,
Peter
right?
Pan. Mm-hmm. Astral planing.
Because they go there, and don't they go to sleep, and then they wake up, and then they're there for what? I don't even know if they're there. Not one day. They're there for a couple of days, aren't they? I mean, I don't know.
I don't know.
Now I have to look at it again. Is there anything that really stands out for you in that movie? Is there like a sequence that you really like?
Well, I love the action sequences, and this is very.
Are you talking about with the pirates?
The pirate
and Captain Hook and Peter Pan?
That Captain Hook trying to drown Tiger Lily and the crocodile,
right?
And just all of the little these things are happening so fast, and every second you're getting a new facial expression or a new reaction or
a funny bit of business, like what I was talking about. Funny. I think every scene, there's something they got the teddy bear. It's Michael's teddy bear.
Yeah. And
the teddy bear isn't really, he's not he's not a bear. He's just this stuffed animal. Mm-hmm. But they keep they keep cutting to it. Like it's on top of, like they're going through, they're doing Following the Leader. And so it's all the Lost Boys going through the forest in Neverland. And so the teddy bear is on top. I think it's sitting on top of his head.
He's part of the crew.
Or on his back. I forgot. But anyway, he goes through and there's a real bear on a boulder. And the bear comes along. And so the teddy bear is coming along on John's back, Michael's back.
He's through the tall grass,
right?
So you can't see.
Yeah,
yeah.
And the bear looks down at it, and he's about to, like, he's using his claws. He's going to, like, come down, swoop down and get it. And then all of a sudden he's bewildered, and then he's just scratching his. I mean, it's funny throughout the whole movie. I mean, they do. It's not hilariously funny, but I find it humorous. Where Wendy is singing "Your Mother and Mine," and they pan the lost boys. They're going from one lost boy to another. The camera is kind of following it around, and then it kind of just ends on the teddy bear just sitting there. And
They must have had a lot of fun.
I think they had a lot of fun working on that movie. And if you notice, there are a lot more realistic characters in Peter Pan, like the mother and the father, and then Wendy is throughout the movie. Peter Pan is throughout the movie, and then Michael and John, and then basically the Lost Boys are very cartoony. The Indians are very cartoony, with the exception of Tiger Lily, who's actually drawn, more human-like than any one of them. And you could see, they had their share of cartooniness, but a whole lot more live, trying to draw these things more in a realistic fashion. And so you could see they had a little bit more money to play with when they were doing that. But there's a lot of inventive bits of business, which is either concocted by a story man or the animator. The animator going in and finding something fun about the scene to kind of, make it interesting to watch. And I think that's one of the, like I said before, I think that's one of the great things about, the Disney animated films is, great music, great story, good direction. And then the animators were adding stuff to it to make every scene kind of fun.
Oh, there were so many little pops of amusement, as you say, bits of business. It's almost like when you're in a group of young children and they're trying to tell you a story, and they always do, like, they always tell the story like, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So you can see these grown adult animators working on then the pirate's coming up, the ropes to get the kid, and he has the cannonball inside the teddy bear, and then he drops it on his head, and then he bites through his sword. Right. So you have all of these very fast little things, and I loved it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
The hits just keep on coming.
The hits keep on coming. Yeah, that scene, which is we talked about this before we went on. That scene where the pirate's coming up the rope, and Michael is basically has the teddy bear, and I guess a cannonball is in it, right? And he takes and somehow is able to wield this and hit the pirate on the head, and the pirate has a big sword in his mouth. It would have been just funny on its own to just have him hit him over the head, and then basically he drops.
Right, bonk.
Bonk, and that in itself is funny, but what happens is he hits him so hard on the head that the teeth go right through the sword, which, if anybody out there has ever bitten on something really hard, that hurts. And so, but anyway, the sword has a big a bite mark in it, giant bite mark in it. And so that's what I'm saying. These scenes, every single, it's almost like every single one has some sort of visual piece of comedy to it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't always need it. But but that's what they were really good at the Disney studio, was having the story people come up with all this interesting bits of business, as I call it, and then the animators going ahead and what I call plussing, which is actually a Disney word. Disney called it plussing.
Interesting.
That's what they did really well.
And it all happened so fast. I mean, I'm sure if I watched it again, I would pick up.
You'd catch something else.
Other things, absolutely,
Yeah, and that's part of the magic of it,
And it makes these action scenes so much fun, and they just go so fast. It's impressive.
Out of the three, which picture did you like the best? Are we still holding firm to
Cinderella?
Yeah. love Cinderella.
I love Cinderella. I did enjoy Jungle Book. I did enjoy Peter Pan.
Right.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
And especially that bit at the end where the curmudgeon father sees the pirate ship basically on the clouds.
Right.
And I remember seeing that.
Yeah.
So
when I was really young.
Really young.
Yeah. So
Deja vu.
he went through the same thing as his kids did. Mm-hmm. So anyway, Marjorie, thank you for coming on here and talking about all this stuff. Maybe we'll have you back and we'll talk about Jungle Book and
I love talking about
Sleeping
these
Beauty.
movies with you.
Yeah.
I hope you like talking with me.
I think the audience got such a kick out of it last time. We got a good response, and so I figured we have you back and do it again, and then we'll have you back and we'll talk about some of the late 50s and the 60s movie, maybe Lady and the Tramp and Sleeping Beauty, and maybe 101 Dalmatians and Jungle Book.
I think I'm ready to try Sleeping Beauty.
Okay, you got it. All right. Thank you, Marjorie. Thank you.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at cartoonerific.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Hey, well, thank you, Miss Marjorie Stewart, for that wonderful interview. And we hope to have her back in the future. Maybe we'll have her look at some other films. So stay tuned for that. I had a lot of fun doing the interviews in 2022. Well, we're looking forward to even more fun interviews in 2023. So I hope you come back for some of those or all of them. Yeah, let's hope. Anyway, if you really like what you're listening to, please subscribe. Go to your favorite service and subscribe to the Cartoonerific Classic Animated Cartoon Podcast. And if you really, really want to help us out, please tell a friend about us. It's very important so that the podcast continues to grow with listeners. Anyway, if you want to help support us here, please go to the company store. That is up and running. And then we have the Animation Art Gallery and cartoon memorabilia, animation memorabilia. You can access that through our website, www.cartoonerific.com. Anyway, I want you all to have a great day. I want you to have an excellent, excellent week. And thank you again for tuning in.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific Podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.